Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has surpassed Florida Governor Ron DeSantis in the critical early presidential primary state of New Hampshire, according to an Emerson College survey released Tuesday. Christie leapfrogged DeSantis for second place in the Granite State, garnering 9% support. DeSantis' support, on the other hand, fell to 8% from 17% in March. Christie's 1-point lead over DeSantis falls within the polls plus or minus 3.4% margin of error. DeSantis has been the alternative to Trump in Emerson polling this presidential cycle. This is the first time we have seen DeSantis drop out of second place in our polling and fall back into the pack of other candidates, said Spencer Kimball, the executive director of Emerson College Polling. Christie's campaign has maintained an intense focus on New Hampshire, while DeSantis' team has prioritized Iowa. However, DeSantis has still made a number of trips to the Granite State. Former President Trump still commands GOP primary field with 49% support, according to the same poll. South Carolina Senator Tim Scott trails DeSantis in fourth place at 6% support, while North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum and former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley tied at 4%. Businessmen Vivek Ramaswamy and Perry Johnson came in at 3% and 2%, respectively. Former Vice President Mike Pence and former Representative Will Hurd each received 1% support. 13% of voters said they were undecided. The Real Clear Politics polling average shows Trump in first place at 54.5% support, while DeSantis is at second place at 14.8%, and Ramaswamy is in third place at 6.3%. The Emerson College poll was conducted August 9th to 11th among 837 registered voters in New Hampshire. This is a very big deal, mainly for the fact that this is the first poll since they've started polling that has DeSantis no longer in second place. And of all the people to leapfrog past him, as the article calls, there's something very poetic about it being Christie. Now, like I said, Christie is probably the only person running in this whole race who is 100% honest about the fact that they're probably not going to win, who we can all just reasonably conclude there's some other reason for them running besides actually thinking they're going to be the Republican nominee for president. But what I respect so much about him is that, I've said before, a lot of these candidates are really cowardly. I disagree with Trump on what? He's a friend of mine. Okay, what do you disagree with him on? We have different ideas of where we should take the country. Okay, what are those ideas? Almost none of them are willing to state that or specify that. And even though Christie's views are not entirely different from Trump, as well as the rest of this field, he is the one candidate who is actively willing to say Trump attempted to commit a coup with January 6th, that the criminal charges against him should be investigated, there is validity to them. Again, one-man crime wave, etc. We've gone over these stories one by one. And I think a lot of voters, again, not enough to win this primary. I'm not going to, because Trump has a 70% support among Republican voters, so we already know that crossing him is it's not something you want to do if you're trying to win. But there is a sizable percentage of voters who, at the very least, can respect Christie for standing out from the pack and being willing to call a spade in this particular instance. It's not enough to win. It's not enough to come anywhere close to winning. I mean, they're talking about Trump's 40 and 50 point lead, and these other people at 9 and 8%. But it is enough for him to have done the impossible, at least what was thought to be impossible since this year started and before this year, of knocking DeSantis consistently from second place, and even in a few cases, I think first two, but I could be wrong about that from some earlier polling, from second place now to third. Christie did that before any other Republican did. And again, we're still months away from voting. We still have the first debate coming up soon. So DeSantis, for all we know, could do this big campaign reset and end up being in second place again. And, he's not that far off from second place if it isn't a 1-point margin. It's in the margin of error. But the purpose of me mentioning this is that I think Christie's surge, even if it's not likely that he's going to win any damn states, is the result of there being too many candidates who are all doing the exact same thing of trying to make the case for why they should be voted for over Trump, but then like trying to play cheerleader for him. And I think he stands out, and a lot of people are very they're noticing that. But this also is a failing of DeSantis because, as I've said before, he waited too long to get in. He is a pretty lousy speaker, in my opinion. This is where woke goes to die. Well, you know, just I'm not a fan of listening to his speeches. I always find myself kind of annoyed. But I think it's a combination of DeSantis not being as good of a candidate as a lot of those early hype artists thought he would be. Many of the other candidates not being willing to criticize Trump in any conceivable way. And thus it leaves Christie looking fairly distinct. And I've said before, I would rather he lead here and just get like 2% in Iowa, because for some reason, I don't know why this is, the Republican who wins Iowa tends to end up not being the nominee. You look at Cruz, you look at Santorum. I mean, it's for some reason, Iowa is like the early kiss of demise for a presidential campaign if you're running as a Republican. So I'd rather Trump win Iowa, which he probably will, and then have Christie direct most of his efforts into New Hampshire. That way he can say, you know what, even if he doesn't win the state, I came in second place. There is a segment of people who are tired of this, and then he can go from there. Of course, I'd rather he win the state, but I don't think we're going to get that lucky with these polling leads. And that's the craziest part to me about this primary, that there's so many candidates. Like, I remember back in, I think it was January, I read an article from The Hill where they were saying that Pompeo and Pence should stay out because they were going to, like, overcrowd the field. And Pence has this whole thing about, like, I was the most recent VP for my party, so I guess I should try to run for president too. But there's no reason for him. I mean, the guy barely registered for the donor threshold for this upcoming debate, and he's polling at 1% in one of the two early primary. It's not like this is some random state. This is one of the two early primary states for his party. So he really has, like, honestly, the only people that should be in this race are the ones that are polling at least 3% plus. If you're at 1, just get out. Like, Pence maybe could do well in Iowa. I don't know. Maybe he's going to have this great, amazing debate performance. But I just think he's wasting his time. But Christie, on the other hand, has a stated mission. He's been making the rounds, right? Criticizing Trump. And he is, honestly, at this point, starting to become, like, if I'm not rooting for anybody in this race, because I've said before, Trump's probably going to win. And some of the people who are not as besmirching of the Constitution like Pence are still bad anyway. But Christie would be the least offensive person to have win, even though I do think his time was 2012, and every race since then has basically just not been open to him, and I think this one will be no exception. But he's the person I am the most on the side of. I'll admit that.